Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our webinar on energy efficiency programs in Northern Illinois. And these incentives are applicable to compressed air systems. And this presentation is being hosted by Fluid-Aire Dynamics and ComEd. And we've got as panelists, Brad Taylor, Sales Engineering Manager with Fluid-Aire. Jeffrey Vaughn may be joining us in a little bit here, and I'm Michael Heine, I'm the Director of Marketing. And with us representing ComEd with both Franklin Energy and Cascade Energy are Henok Kidanu and Martin Lott. And so I wanted to welcome both you gentlemen, and maybe you could just start off by telling us, Henok, what is Franklin Energy exactly, and what's the relationship to ComEd, and then Martin, you probably could do the same thing.
Sure, yeah, so Franklin Energy is obviously an energy company based out of Wisconsin, but operate regionally. We work essentially as contractors for utilities. So we work under ComEd's industrial sector and support their industrial systems program, as well as other utilities programs for NICOR, Peoples Gas, North Shore Gas. So I guess to introduce myself, my name is Henok Kidanu, and I work as the technical lead on the industrial systems program.
Great, thanks, Henok. And Martin, tell us about Cascade Energy.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, Martin Lott. I'm the program manager for ComEd's Office of Industrial Outreach. And so my company, Cascade Energy, was hired by ComEd to assist customers access and fully leverage the full breadth of incentive programs that ComEd has to offer. And so one way to think of us is as a concierge for customers and service providers such as Fluid-Aire to get the absolute most out of the programs. We want to make it simple and easy for everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So Brad, you're going to lead this discussion, and we've got 3 programs that we want to talk about today. So take it away.
Oh, no, I appreciate it very much, Mike, and all the effort that's gone into putting this presentation together. It helps us recite what all these programs are about. But as you had mentioned, the program is broken into 3 different segments. The small business program, which is really anyone up to 100 kW in demand. And then we have the standard program or prescriptive, which is a certain number of incentives that apply at a standard rate towards different types of products, whether it's compressors, your HVAC system, or whatever may use electricity. Then there's the comprehensive program, which is much more broad in what it serves in regards to an incentive. And they pay out at a rate of usually around 12 cents, although there's sometimes additional incentives to increase project output. So we'll hear a bit about those details from Martin Lott and Henok. So the first program that I'm going to go over here is the small business program, which, as I had mentioned, is anyone that consumes up to 100 kW demand. The easiest way to find out that piece of information is look at a existing ComEd bill that you have. About 1/3 down from the top of the bill, there will be in bold print, it'll say 0 to 100 kW demand. If you read that, you can apply for the small business program. So what we're going to talk about specifically is the compressed air side of it, specifically the compressors. So if you have up to about 75 horsepower is the maximum they allow, they will pay about $400 per horsepower to replace your existing fixed speed rotary screw compressor. So you have to have an existing rotary screw compressor installed. It has to be under 75 horsepower, and you must be within that 0 to 100 kW demand. So why is this important, and why is this a very generous incentive? Well, for one, $400 per horsepower in many cases pays for over 50% of the capital cost of the equipment. So from that standpoint, it's a very, very generous program. But then the variable speed drive technology itself it has a lot of benefits as well. Obviously, energy savings is one component of it, but think about the reduced heat, the reduced wear, the reduced maintenance, reduced noise level. These are all other advantages that come along with this type of technology. But specifically, when we're talking about energy, the reason why ComEd incentivizes this is they're trying to reduce the demand on the grid. For you as an end user, you want to try and remain as efficient and competitive in your marketplace. So typical fixed speed type compressors, the way they operate is you turn them on in the morning and they run until you turn them off at night. Well, when you have compressed air demand, the compressor loads or compresses and puts air into the system. Now, very much unlike a traditional piston type compressor, it doesn't just switch off, okay? Because they're usually bigger horsepowers, they go into an unload mode. During that period of time, the motor is still spinning, doing no usable work to your facility. And that energy being consumed is complete waste. With a variable speed type compressor, they will vary the output demand or vary the input kW to match the output demand of your operations. And the ratio is nearly 1-to-1. So it's a very, very efficient way to operate a compressor. So when you look at, a 25 or 30 horsepower compressor, you pay 50%, maybe $6,000. In some cases, the return on the energy saved is less than a year. So your out of pocket or your ROI can be much less than a year in many, many instances. When you get up into the 40, 50 horsepower range, the payout is closer to 75 to 90%. And the ROI, of course, with the energy savings is much, much, much quicker. I don't know if that covers it well from what you've heard, Martin or Henok.
Yep, you're right on the mark, Brad.
Sounds good.
Very good. So there's other there's other components that can be utilized in the program as well, such as zero loss drain valves. They will pay, I believe, up to $500 per drain valve installed. They also have a leak repair component to it, which is, I think, is paid out per leak repaired. Every leak in your facility, the energy to feed it is at a rate of about $35 per CFM per shift. So if you can hear a leak walking by it, whether it's a quick coupler or a insta tube fitting or a slit hose, if you can hear it walking by, that leak is upwards of a $35 a year range. So fix them, and ComEd will incentivize you to do so. So moving on to the standard or prescriptive program, we'll open this up to Martin here, but it does require a pre-approval process. Very, very simple. We've done hundreds of them. Simple 1 or 2 page document. We submit and with a general overview of what the project is, and they respond very, very quickly with an approval of about 99.9%. So very, very quick process. And it's very simple, whether it's a drain valve or a compressor or a cycling dryer. You just fill in the quantity and boom, bada bing, you got your incentive amount. Once you've implemented the project, they will pay us directly so that we can make it in the form of an instant rebate when we do the project directly with you. So there's no waiting for your incentive. But go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I just add that, some of the key offerings here under the standard program, are for an integrated variable speed air compressor is $85 per horsepower. So if you have 150 horsepower compressor that you're eyeing, multiply that by 85, and that is the incentive that ComEd will pay out to hopefully offset the cost of that new compressor. Also, for example, refrigerated air dryers, we'll pay upwards of $3 per CFM, again, to help offset the cost of that. This program is really designed to be quick and easy. There's really very little analysis that needs to go into it. It's just show us what you want to buy, and we'll get you pre-approved for that project and get some money in your hands to make that purchase. And so to that end, service providers such as Fluid-Aire and your outreach team with ComEd are happy to assist in those applications to make sure that those are done as quickly and painlessly as possible.
Yes, just to reiterate, it's a very simple process, and all we require from customers is their signature. We do all the paperwork internally here. And if you're replacing an existing compressor or installing a brand new one, the incentive applies to both. And it's a little different in that sense from the small business, where you have to have an existing rotary screw. With this prescriptive program, it's not required that you have an existing rotary screw. Is that right, Martin?
That's correct. Yeah, this could be brand new. This could be for a facility expansion. Really, it doesn't really matter what you have already in place.
So while the incentive rates are lower, the variable speed drive savings are much higher for this type of program, typically because the compressor horsepower are a lot larger. So when we start getting into 75, 100, 125s, running 3 shifts, a variable speed drive running at 50% could be delivering upwards of $15,000 to $20,000 in annual savings. So it's a great program. It's even greater to have a variable speed drive implemented on your compressed air system. Just to touch briefly on the dryers that you spoke about, a typical refrigerated type dryer is non-cycling, especially up to 200 CFM. When we get above 200 CFM, we have a couple options available to us, including thermal mass type, which is usually a ice or a cold water or cold glycol bath, or in some instances, a mass such as a sand or aluminum block. And then there's recently that's come on the market is variable speed drive type dryers, which I'm a big fan of because the refrigeration circuit is very simple. Okay, but the other advantage for the end user is it holds a very consistent dew point. We're able to manage and maintain that dew point as close to freezing point as possible, which delivers drier air to the compressed air user. When we're talking about cycling and VFD, just like with a rotary screw compressor, there's less wear. So rather than constantly running the refrigeration compressor, we're either cycling it off or slowing down the speed at which it runs. So you get the longevity factor as well as a rebate from ComEd for implementing. So that's very good. Thank you for that overview, Martin. So now rolling on to the comprehensive, get a bit more broad in what we can do. If we can deliver savings, we will get paid by ComEd for delivering those kWh savings at a rate currently, I believe, at 12 cents. Is that right, Henrik?
Correct. And I think the only requirement to be eligible for the comprehensive program in comparison to the small businesses is any customer that's greater than 100 kW peak demand use. And essentially you can take kind of two approaches. There's the custom approach when it comes to one-off measures that you're looking to identify, implement, and get some incentives for. The comprehensive approach is really kind of a deeper dive into what potential energy saving opportunities there are for your facility. So there's two types of approaches you can kind of take for that. There's the Fix It Now offering, which kind of covers what's most common and most popular, which is kind of the leak repair. Most people call it the leak repair program. And then there's also the comprehensive approach, which is a little bit more of an in-depth analysis of your facility. It's a thorough, comprehensive study that's developed, and you're working with not only the service provider that's supporting you, for example, Fluid-Aire, but you're also working with an energy advisor to kind of help walk you through the process. So it's not just fill out these documentations, get it approved, and then get your incentive. This is very like a thorough kind of step-by-step, what kind of opportunities are there? Let's work with Fluid-Aire to kind of evaluate your facility, identify what incentives you're eligible for, and apply for it. So you also get that support there.
That's really good. And the Fix It Now program has been a real hit for us here, as you well know, and customers really take advantage of it. I think our biggest battle is people think it's too good to be true. And it's not. It's a very generous program that all compressed air or all energy users are paying into that fund. And this is your opportunity, just like with the lighting programs or the HVAC programs, to take advantage of and benefit from the long-term energy incentives. Fix It Now, you guys now allow us to do those surveys every 9 months, which I'm a big fan of, because as we all know, compressed air leaks, they seem to pop up as fast as we repair them. Mm-hmm. And as discussed in the small business overview, your biggest offenders for compressed air leaks are those simple, easy to fix ones, those compressed air institute fittings, those couplers that are on the end of every tool, slit hoses. Of course, then there's the bigger ones like leaky cup seals inside cylinders or MAC valves. Yes, those are more challenging, but through the program, you guys are paying service providers to identify them and then an additional fee to repair them. And then the beautiful workbook that you guys put together that shows the leak, the tag number, the picture, and the flow rate, the decibel rating that computes the flow rate. And my favorite part is the ROI, or the cost of that leak, and then adding the cost to repair it, and then the ROI to do that. So while you may have a cup seal on a cylinder that's going to cost $3,000 to repair, it's consuming 10 CFM per day, per shift, or however many hours the compressor is running. It tallies up to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in energy. And by having a simple ROI figure, it allows management to make a very, very quick decision, doesn't it?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So it's very simple. I think there's maybe 2 signatures that the customer needs to make, and we're off to the races, patching up their compressed air system. And then, of course, the comprehensive study, a bit more complex. It requires a pre-study and a post-study. We have 2 weeks of logging that's required once they've signed up for the program. So it gives us a baseline as to what we can do, whether it's variable speed drive compressors or maybe a combination of some fixed speeds serving a base load, and then some more efficient trim compressors, whether they're turn valves or poppet valves or spiral valves or variable speed drive. There's a lot of options out there, but until we know what the base load is, it's tough for anybody, regardless of how many years you've been in the industry, to make recommendations that are going to deliver the savings the customer expects. But the comprehensive can go beyond compressed air, is that right?
Correct. So there's 5 different market segments, essentially. It's compressed air, process cooling, industrial refrigeration, wastewater treatment and water supply, and what we consider process efficiency, which is essentially any industrial opportunities that don't fall under the same buckets that the study offers. So it's the same type of approach, essentially 3 phases. There's investigation, implementation, and verification for each. And you're looking at your facility in a more broader view than just one-off measures that you think might benefit the facility. It's starting off typically with that fix it now to kind of step into the door and fix that easy low-hanging fruit that's cost effective that we know is going to benefit. And then digging in a little bit deeper with the service providers who understand your system, understand how it operates, finds ways to improve performance and implement that. So yeah, we kind of tackle all 3 of those industries or equipment types, or all 5 of those equipment types.
So if you can dream up energy savings, if you think a certain process could be done more efficiently, whether it's through a variable speed drive or a lower wattage motor or whatever it may be, reach out to Henak or myself, and I'll put you in the right direction. We focus primarily on compressed air, but these 5 different segments, or maybe it's even your dust collector. If we can deliver kWh savings, there's more likely an incentive at a rate of 12 cents that can be paid out. So that's great. Just to share a case study, there was a project in Wooddale, sheet metal former, and they had inherited a 150 horsepower compressor from the previous building owner, and he thought it was a heck of a deal. And I'm sure it was if he had sold that compressor the day that he had acquired it. So what I mean by that is we came in, I did it a bit as a complimentary sort of a service, just pop some data loggers on for a few days, and I got an overview of how his compressed air system was operating. And what I found is that this large 150 horsepower compressor was running at about a 10 or 15% load. Well, the savings on it were close to $42,000 a year. So what seemed like a big bargain wasn't so much. In short, we put in 2 40 horsepower compressors, one mostly as a redundant to the other. Did serve a very short-term high load demand for their oven. But the customer made me go with a 40 after my recommendation of going with 220s, just because he believed that my calculations were wrong. We put in those 40s and they run below 30% load a majority of the time. Had he not done that for a couple of years, he would have still be burning through $40,000 a year in wasted energy. And his ROI on that system, I believe, was about 1.1 years. It totally had completely paid for the whole system through his energy savings. So that was an incredible success story that I thought I'd share with the audience here today. All right, anything else you'd like to say, Henak or Martin?
No, we do have, I know we're going through the slides shortly. It looks like we covered a lot during that first kind of go around, but I know the details for each program are kind of in those follow-up slides. So I'm sure we can kind of touch on those bullet points as well.
Yeah, sure. So as we've reviewed the small business program here, $400 per horsepower. And again, you must have an existing fixed speed rotary screw compressor. There is a maximum horsepower of 75 related to the program, but there's no minimum. Although typically most rotary screws start at about 15 horsepower. So typically we see applications starting there. And then of course they have the other segments relating to zero loss drain valves and leak repair as well. There is a nozzle offering that they have. I think they pay $5 for energy efficient nozzles, which includes blowguns. So if you have leaky blowguns that don't have an energy efficient tip or just have a 5/16 copper tube on the end, it might be worth it to look at replacing those.
Hey, Brad, this is Mike. You may want to, we've got the slides here that we can work through that'll get you to those different topics. So This is the second part of the small business on the VSD Upgrade Offering, and then we can move on to the standard and custom programs that bring in all of that content there.
Okay, very good. Another stipulation is you must have your fixed speed rotary screw compressor installed for at least a month, which that's typically not a challenge for any of our users taking advantage of this program. And this is the same program that incentivizes lighting or refrigeration. Again, as long as you're under that 0 to 100 kW, you can apply for all these different incentives. All right, rolling on. Go ahead, Henrik. I'm sorry, Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, so these this is a listing of some of the prescriptive incentives that are available for these equipment upgrades or purchases. You know, a couple thoughts on the process here, and if you're working through Fluid-Aire, I'm sure they're going to guide you right here. But the important thing to remember is, as you're considering, say, purchasing a new air compressor, it's important that we get this application submitted before you issue a PO. If you get too far down the purchasing and installation path, you may not be eligible for these incentives. So we want to make sure we keep those on the table, get that application filled out, receive your pre-approval for those funds, and then you're free to make that purchase, install that equipment, and then ultimately receive that incentive check once it's complete. A couple more thoughts on the custom program. So custom, as the name suggests, is pretty much anything else, anything that doesn't fit into this standard or common type opportunities. And so these we just have to handle on a case-by-case basis. And so if you're really any piece of equipment where you have an option between kind of one piece of equipment that's less efficient and maybe another that's more efficient, well, we can incentivize that difference at 12 cents per kilowatt hour up to 100% of the cost, right? The 100% of the cost between option A and option B. And so the standard program offers incentives for new air compressors up to 200 horsepower. So anything north of that, we're going to take through the custom program, and it's going to require just a little bit more analysis on our part, but between Outreach and Fluid-Aire, we'll do all the heavy lifting for you. And then, yeah, likewise, here's kind of a breakout of the standard incentives on refrigerated dryers. Yeah, as Brad said, you know, that variable speed refrigerated air dryer, that's a real winner in my mind. And then also if you're adding storage or receiver capacity here for your compressed air system on load unload systems, we'll give you $1.50 per gallon on a new storage tank.
Yeah, and I could step in here, as I described earlier, the two kind of segments of the comprehensive approach, or what we call officially the industrial systems program. Like I said, the first one is kind of the fix it now. It's the easy, kind of cost-effective leak repair option, but it goes above and beyond leak repairs. But everybody knows it for its quick fix, very important energy measure implementation. So what the program offers is $6 per horsepower, which is paid directly to the service provider, as well as up to $120 per leak identified and repaired. The benefit there is essentially there's not much effort on your part as a customer because that incentive goes directly to the service provider. So all that's really needed is for Fluid-Aire to come in, identify the number of leaks you have, fix those leaks, and all the paperwork and documentation comes from them, and we pay Fluid-Aire directly. Anything that's above $120 per leaks, say for example, some of the leaks that are identified are difficult to repair, that might increase the cost, that would be invoiced from Fluid-Aire directly. But as part of the program, we pay that up to $120 to the service provider directly. Next. So yeah, the qualifications are obviously just to be over 100 kW each peak demand. The compressor size has to be greater than 25 horsepower. Now that can include, and again, this is for non-backup compressors, that can include multiple compressor sizes combined. So say, for example, you have 3 or 4 15 horsepower compressors, that will qualify. The requirement for the program is at least 50% of the leaks identified must be repaired, and at least one leak for every 5 horsepower of non-backup air compressors are required to be repaired. As you can see, there's zip codes listed under here. Essentially, these cover the only customers who are eligible are those who fall under ComEd's territory. These are certain zip codes that don't fall under that. I believe Naperville has its own utility company, so they don't fall under ComEd. So if you fall under these zip codes, you may not be eligible for this offering. Next. Easiest way to participate really is just to identify if you're eligible because you have a greater kWh than 100. A greater peak demand of kW than 100. And then contact your vendor, contact Fluid-Aire, have them come and do the walkthrough and identify the leak potential and savings, and they do pretty much most of the work after that.
A very generous program, and you guys are hearing it direct from the top. This is a legit program, and it is very simple. Very simple.
Mm-hmm.
A couple signatures, we do all the paperwork.
Yep. In addition to those leak repairs, there's other energy efficiency opportunities that you're able to get incentives for as well. That's high efficiency air nozzles, low pressure drop filters, no loss constant trains. These are all opportunities in addition to that leak repair. So once Fluid-Aire does that initial walkthrough, they keep their eye open for other opportunities that you guys can repair and get savings from. And again, this incentive goes directly to the service provider, so there's really no cost to you as a customer. And then to kind of transition into the industrial study, we kind of use that Fix It Now as a step in the door for service providers to really kind of look into other opportunities outside of just the standard Fix It Now measures. And if they're able to identify those measures, essentially they develop a comprehensive report as part of the investigation phase. They work with you to implement those measures. And then they also do a post-analysis as part of the verification phase. And then after the work is completed and those verified savings are confirmed, you as a customer are eligible to receive 12 cents per kilowatt hour saved. So there's the service provider is getting paid directly from ComEd for the study. And there's also the customer incentive that's go directly to you as a customer. As part of that data logging, there's at least 2 weeks for the pre and post. And there is a commitment as part of the study of at least $15,000. But the catch there is you're not paying for the study. Essentially, you're committing to $15,000 of the recommended measures that you plan on implementing into your facilities. So you're getting the benefit out of those savings. Now, I just want to put a grain of salt that, you know, if there's no $15,000 isn't identified as part of that study, you're not required to implement it. It's just really for ComEd to encourage you to move forward with the measures that were identified as part of that study. So I did want to throw that caveat in there. And yeah, I mean, you work closely with the vendor to do the documentation, to identify those measures, to implement those measures, and get those things approved. So it's really not much commitment to you as a customer, other than being able to be present and coordinate with the parties involved. I did want to note here on the special note below, and this is ComEd programs throughout. If you do 3 qualifying energy incentives projects, whether that be a custom project, an industrial system comprehensive study, and say, for example, lighting, you're able to qualify for an additional 20% of incentives for those measures. So that encourages people to really kind of do more for their facilities from the programs that are offered through ComEd. And then these are other examples as part of a comprehensive approach to your facility. Blower systems, compressed air demand, obviously the tools involved, fan systems, hydraulic systems, pumps, and vacuums are kind of common points of view or measures that service providers and professionals kind of look at as ways to improve your system's performance and reduce your energy use.
Thank you very much for that, Henok.
Yeah, we've got time for questions and answers, guys. We don't have any on the board at this point, but Brad, maybe you could just wrap that up and bring some of your perspective into what the guys just shared.
Yeah, just what Henok was reviewing on the comprehensive study side. Often what Fluid-Aire will do is just a little preliminary study like we had done for that Wooddale project. Just a few days of information to get a snapshot into what the savings could be before we go into a full 2-week logging. So that's something we offer. The other point I'd like to make is that you don't know what you don't measure, right? I recommend doing a study, even a basic baseline study, at least once a year, because your processes change, right? Just look at what's happened with this whole COVID crisis. Our production lines have, in many cases, shut down or we're under limited production. Well, it's likely if we have multiple compressors that the pressure settings or the way we have them sequenced needs to be changed. And that's what a study will show us in a graphical view, is how those changes should be made. Another component to that, and we're just in a testing phase of it now, is continuous monitoring. So our tagline is you won't continuously know what you don't continuously measure. And that has a lot of other advantages to it beyond just energy efficiency and leak rate, but it can help us be predictive in any shutdowns that could potentially be happening with the compressor, such as over temperature, which many of you compressed air users know is the issue about 90% of the time. When we have a shutdown, it's temperature related, whether it's low on oil or a plug cooler or a thermostat. So this could help us prevent those shutdowns before they happen. So those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that as well. As Brad, you mentioned continuous monitoring. We're actually in the process of, we've actually launched an additional program incentive offering where based on the savings you're able to achieve by installing a equipment monitoring system, you're able to get additional incentives as well, in addition to the leak repair that you choose to move forward with. So it's kind of, you're able to get those incentives off the bat from just identifying, repairing those leaks, and then also throughout the year on a quarterly basis get incentives based on the increased improvement your facility based on monitoring devices.
So it's a brand new program for ComEd. They'll pay for the monitoring device. It's a little bit more complex than what you see in the photo here, but it gives a very useful tool for any compressed air user to have at his fingertips on his phone, desktop, a glance of what's going on with their compressed air system. So reach out, we can provide more information in that regard. Well, that's all I have, Mike. Do you have any closing comments?
I guess another thing I guess I wanted to add too was you mentioned the other offerings or equipment types that comprehensive touches on, rather be industrial refrigeration, process cooling, compressed air. As part of the industrial programs, when you're working with a service provider, they come into your facility like Fluid-Aire would focus on compressed air systems, but they also work in a closed network of other professionals. So if they feel like there's other opportunities outside of the compressed air equipment that you have at your facility, they bring those opportunities to us as a program, and we look to bring in other professionals to kind of provide their expertise on ways to improve in addition to the services that compressed air vendors or Fluid-Aire provides.
And that's good. We often hear that in regards to the lighting. When I tell them it's the same program as the lighting, oh yeah, we did that. We had great success. The guys were very helpful and we saw immediate savings. Guys, it comes from the same pot.
Yep.
Yeah, and just to build on that further, pretty much any change or upgrade you're considering, even if you don't think there's an energy element to it, it might be worth just, bringing us in and we'll take a look, and there might be incentive dollars we can provide you for that. These incentive dollars really come from you. You're paying into these incentive programs through your bill each and every month. And I think this is a way for you to reclaim those dollars that you've paid in. So let's look for every possible opportunity for you to get these incentives.
Yeah, I hesitate telling people it's free money. I tell them it's their money that
Right.
you pay in monthly into
Exactly.
these programs. Recapture them, like you said, Martin. That's good.
Very good. Well, if there's nothing else, guys, thank you very much for your time and effort in helping us put this together. And it was good to have your input. And we will be running other webinars in the future, and be sure to keep our audience apprised of that. And we'd love to hear from you. Brad Taylor and his number and email are there. And also Jeffrey Vaughn, who wasn't able to make it today, but you can contact him. He's one of our sales leaders in the Chicagoland area. So we thank you all again for your time, and wish you all a great day. Thank you, Hannah and Martin. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.